Welcome to my channel. Try to hear the latest story.
I'm Casper, 32 years old, and nothing prepares you for reading. We're cutting all ties. Don't come around ever again from your own father. The message hit my screen at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday, followed quickly by my sister Alexis reacting with a heart. My fingers trembled as I typed back, "I'll pull my name from all loans tomorrow." By midnight, our family chat exploded with capital letters and accusations I never thought I'd hear. Before I dive into this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to stand up for yourself against people who were supposed to love you unconditionally. Growing up in the Matthews household looked perfect from the outside. My father, Harold, worked as a regional manager for a manufacturing company, while my mother, Diane, balanced her time between part-time accounting and maintaining our family home in suburban Minnesota. Together with my older brother, Brandon, and younger sister, Alexis, we projected the image of a quintessential American family. 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a golden retriever named Rusty, and family dinners on Sunday nights. But beneath the surface, expectations ran high. My parents had specific ideas about success and family obligation, particularly when it came to financial matters. Dad often repeated his mantra, "Family supports family, no questions asked." This sounded noble in theory, but in practice, it almost always meant the support flowed in one direction toward whoever my parents decided needed it most, regardless of personal circumstances. I tried my best to meet these expectations. After finishing college with a business degree, I secured a position at a technology firm and worked diligently, earning promotions every few years. When I married Natalie 7 years ago, my parents seemed pleased, though they constantly dropped hints about how her teaching salary wouldn't contribute much to our family obligations. The initial signs of trouble began about 3 months ago. My parents were celebrating their 35th wedding anniversary with a large party at an upscale restaurant downtown. They'd been planning it for months, sending formal invitations and arranging for extended family to fly in from across the country. Unfortunately, my 5-year-old son Jake developed severe pneumonia just 2 days before the event. His fever spiked to 104 degrees, and the pediatrician advised us to monitor him closely, warning that hospitalization might be necessary if his condition worsened. I called my parents immediately to explain the situation. "Mom, I'm really sorry, but Jake is seriously sick. His breathing is labored, and Natalie and I need to take shifts watching him through the night. I don't think we'll be able to make it to the anniversary dinner." The silence on the other end lasted uncomfortably long before my mother responded. "This anniversary only happens once, Casper. Your father and I have been looking forward to having all our children there. Can't Natalie handle Jake for one evening? It's just a few hours." "It's not that simple," I explained. "His condition could change quickly, and the doctor said both parents should be available if he needs emergency care." "Well, I suppose we'll just have to tell everyone our youngest son had something more important to do," my father cut in, having apparently been listening on another extension. Despite their disappointment, I stood firm. Instead of attending, I sent an expensive crystal vase I knew they'd been eyeing, along with a heartfelt card. I also arranged for a video message compilation from family and friends who couldn't attend in person. I called 3 times during the evening to wish them well, but each call went straight to voicemail. The day after the anniversary, I reached out again. My mother answered, but sounded distant. "The party was lovely, not that you'd know," she said. "Your Aunt Susan asked about you, and it was quite embarrassing to explain your absence." "I'm sorry, Mom. Jake's fever finally broke this morning, but yesterday was really touch and go. I wish I could have been there." "Well, wishes don't fill empty chairs, do they?" she replied before changing the subject abruptly. My brother Brandon called that same evening. "Way to disappoint Mom and Dad on their big day," he said without preamble. "Brandon, my son was seriously ill. What was I supposed to do? You could have shown up for an hour, made an appearance. But no, you always have some excuse when it comes to family obligations. Must be nice to pick and choose when you want to be part of this family." Brandon, 35 and still unmarried, had always been my parents' golden child. He worked at a law firm but hadn't made partner despite a decade of trying. Still, in my parents' eyes, his career choices were always praised while mine were merely acceptable. Even Alexis, my 29-year-old sister who usually stayed out of conflicts, sent a text that stung. Parents were really hurt last night. Jake would have been fine without you for a few hours. I tried repeatedly to mend fences over the following weeks. I sent additional gifts. I called regularly. I even suggested hosting a second anniversary dinner at my home when Jake recovered. Each attempt was met with cool politeness at best, outright dismissal at worst. "We understand you have your priorities, Casper," my father said during one call. "Just don't expect us to rearrange ours to accommodate yours." The distance grew, conversations shortened, and a coldness settled over our previously warm family connections. I couldn't understand how missing one event, even an important one for a legitimate family emergency, could cause such a dramatic shift. But as I would soon discover, this incident merely provided the excuse my family had been waiting for to express long-simmering resentments. What my family never acknowledged openly was the extent of financial support I had provided over the years. It began shortly after I secured my position at the technology firm. My parents' mortgage had ballooned due to some poor refinancing choices, and they faced the possibility of losing their home. Without hesitation, I agreed to co-sign a new mortgage of $350,000 to secure a lower interest rate. The understanding was that they would make all payments, but my credit score and income were necessary to qualify for the terms they needed. "It's just a signature," my father had said. "You won't actually pay anything, but it would mean everything to your mother to keep her home." How could I refuse? I signed the papers, becoming legally responsible for a debt that was nearly twice my annual salary at the time. 2 years later, Brandon approached me about his plans to open a law practice. Despite his firm's reluctance to make him partner, he remained confident in his abilities. He needed $75,000 for office space, equipment, and initial operating costs. "The banks want too much collateral," he explained. "But if you co-sign, I can get better terms. It's a solid investment, Casper. I'll have clients lined up from day one." Once again, I agreed. Brandon's practice opened with fanfare but struggled to attract consistent business. The monthly loan payments became irregular, with Brandon often calling to ask if I could cover this month with promises to pay me back when clients paid their bills. Those repayments rarely materialized. Then came Alexis's education loans. After changing majors 3 times, she had accumulated $50,000 in student debt and needed help consolidating at a better rate. Rather than co-sign, I paid off her loans directly with money from my savings, with her promise to repay me through monthly installments of $300. After making 4 payments, she stopped, always with a different excuse: car repairs, unexpected rent increases, medical bills. "I'll catch up next month," became her standard response, though next month never seemed to arrive. Meanwhile, my own financial situation required careful management. Natalie and I purchased a modest home and welcomed Jake into our family. Childcare costs, our own student loans, and the usual expenses of raising a family meant that our budget was tight despite my decent salary. I took on additional consulting projects on weekends to ensure we stayed afloat, often working 60-hour weeks while trying to be present for my wife and son. Natalie noticed the strain first. "You're exhausted all the time," she observed one evening after I'd fallen asleep at the dinner table. "And I saw another call from Brandon on your phone. He's asking for money again, isn't he?" I couldn't deny it. "He's having trouble with cash flow at the practice. It's just temporary." "That's what you said last year," Natalie pointed out. "And what about the payment reminder from the mortgage company for your parents' loan? They're late again, aren't they?" The mortgage company had indeed called. My parents were 2 months behind on payments, putting my credit score at risk. When I'd called to discuss it, my mother had been dismissive. "We've had some unexpected expenses with the bathroom remodel," she explained. "We'll catch up soon. There's no need to worry, so much family helps family." The bathroom remodel had been entirely optional, a luxury upgrade with imported tiles and fixtures that they'd decided to undertake despite the financial strain. Natalie sat beside me on our worn sofa, taking my hand. "Casper, I know you love your family, and I've supported your desire to help them. But we have our own family to think about too. Jake will need braces next year. We haven't put anything into his college fund for months. Our roof needs replacing. When do we start prioritizing our needs?" Her words hit hard because I knew she was right. I had been so focused on fulfilling my family obligations, as defined by my parents, that I was potentially compromising my own family's security. Your parents and siblings are adults, Natalie continued gently. They make their own choices. If Brandon's practice isn't working, maybe he should consider other options. If your parents can't afford bathroom remodels, maybe they shouldn't do them. These aren't your problems to solve. But they're counting on me, I argued weakly. And Jake and I aren't? The hurt in her voice was unmistakable. We need you too, not just your paycheck, but your presence, your energy. You're spreading yourself too thin. And for what? They don't even seem grateful. That last point struck a painful chord. Despite the significant financial assistance I provided, my family rarely acknowledged it. Instead, it had become an expectation, almost a right in their minds. When I occasionally mentioned feeling stretched thin, the response was usually some variation of, "We would do the same for you," though they never had, or "That's what family does," though the obligations seemed disproportionately mine. That night, I lay awake pondering Natalie's words and the imbalance in my family relationships. I loved my parents, brother and sister deeply, but something wasn't right. I just couldn't bring myself to establish boundaries. Yet the prospect of disappointing them seemed too painful to bear. Little did I know that events would soon force my hand in ways I couldn't have imagined. Jake's 5th birthday arrived in early April. Though our budget was tight, Natalie and I planned a special celebration. Jake had been talking about dinosaurs nonstop for months, so we transformed our backyard into a prehistoric wonderland with dinosaur decorations, fossil-shaped cookies, and even hired a local paleontology student to show the children real fossils. It wasn't extravagant, but it was thoughtful and tailored to our son's interests. We invited family from both sides, including my parents, Brandon and Alexis. Jake had been especially excited about showing his dinosaur collection to his grandparents, whom he hadn't seen in nearly 2 months due to the growing tension. "Do you think Grandpa will like my Tyrannosaurus Rex?" he asked repeatedly in the days leading up to the party. "Of course he will, buddy," I assured him, though privately I wondered if my father would even show up. The day of the party arrived with perfect spring weather. Natalie's parents arrived early to help set up, bringing handmade decorations and a dinosaur-themed cake they'd special ordered from a local bakery. Jake's friends from preschool came with their parents, filling our backyard with laughter and excitement. But as the afternoon progressed, it became increasingly clear that my side of the family wasn't coming. The party was scheduled for 2 o'clock. By 3:30, Jake had asked about his grandparents 7 times. With each question, my heart sank further. I called my parents' home phone, and both their cell phones all went to voicemail. I texted Brandon and Alexis without response. At 4 o'clock, as the party was winding down, Jake approached me with a small toy dinosaur clutched in his hand. "Was I bad, Daddy? Is that why Grandma and Grandpa didn't come?" The innocent question nearly broke me. I knelt to his level, fighting back emotions. "No, buddy, you're the best kid in the whole world. Sometimes grown-ups just have other things they need to do." "But it's my birthday," he said, his lower lip trembling slightly. "I wanted to show Grandpa my dinosaurs." I hugged him tightly, promising we'd take pictures to show them later. Natalie caught my eye over Jake's shoulder, her expression a mixture of sympathy and suppressed anger on our son's behalf. After the last guest departed and Jake had fallen asleep among his new toys, I finally received a text from my mother. "Sorry we missed the party. Had a previous engagement." The vagueness of the previous engagement prompted me to call my parents again the next morning. This time, my father answered. "We had a golf tournament," he explained, without a hint of remorse. "It's been on our calendar for months." "Dad, it was Jake's birthday. Your only grandson turned 5 years old yesterday. You couldn't skip golf for that? Now listen here," he said, his tone sharpening. "We can't be expected to drop everything every time you have some small event. You made it clear where your priorities lie when you missed our anniversary party. That was completely different. Jake was seriously ill." "Well, we had commitments," he replied. "Besides, the boy will have plenty more birthdays." The conversation with Brandon proved even more disheartening. When I finally reached him that evening, his dismissal was callous. "It's just a kid's birthday, Casper. Not exactly a major life event." "He's your nephew," I reminded him. "He was really disappointed you didn't come." "Look, not all of us are into the whole kid thing. I had clients to meet. Some of us have professional responsibilities." The implication that caring for my son somehow made me less professional stung deeply. You could have stopped by for 20 minutes, I persisted. It would have meant the world to Jake. A 5-year-old won't even remember who was at his birthday party next week, Brandon scoffed. Stop being so dramatic about everything. Alexis at least attempted an excuse when I reached her. I had to cover a shift at work, she claimed. Last-minute thing, couldn't get out of it. But later that day, I saw her Instagram post a series of photos time-stamped during Jake's party, showing her at a rooftop bar, with friends, cocktails in hand, with the caption, "Sunday Fun Day. Best day drinking." Something in me shifted then. The hurt transformed into a cold clarity, as I realized my family hadn't just been too busy, they had actively chosen to snub my son's birthday as some sort of punishment for my perceived transgressions. They had used an innocent child as a pawn in whatever game they were playing. I didn't confront Alexis about the Instagram post. Instead, I stepped back, taking a full week without initiating contact with any of them. I needed time to process what was happening and what it meant for our family relationships moving forward. During that week of silence, my friend Marcus called with information that solidified my growing suspicions about my family's attitude toward me. Marcus had been dining at Salvatore's, an upscale Italian restaurant, when he spotted my parents at a nearby table with some friends. I wasn't eavesdropping intentionally, Marcus assured me, but they were talking loudly, and when I heard your name, I couldn't help paying attention. According to Marcus, my father had been complaining about me to their dinner companions. We gave him everything, he'd said, the best education, all our support, and now he acts like we're just an afterthought. Ungrateful is what it is. My mother had apparently nodded in agreement, adding, "He's changed since he got married. That wife of his has turned him against his own family." The characterization of me as ungrateful and Natalie as some sort of manipulator was so far from reality that it left me speechless. While I had been working myself to exhaustion trying to support both my immediate family and my extended one, they had been portraying me as the villain in their narrative. That night, I sat on our back porch long after Natalie and Jake had gone to bed, contemplating the painful revelation that perhaps my family didn't value me as a person, only what I could provide for them. It was a devastating thought, but one I could no longer ignore as the evidence mounted. The situation deteriorated further when I received an unexpected call from my Uncle Warren, my father's older brother. Warren had always been the black sheep of the family, more laid back and straightforward than my father, choosing a simple life as a carpenter over corporate ambitions. My father often criticized his lack of proper ambition, but I had always appreciated Warren's authenticity. "Casper," Warren said when I answered, "I just wanted to check if you're okay with your parents selling the old family land." Seemed odd they didn't mention it when I spoke to them. My heart sank. The old family land was a 5-acre plot in rural Minnesota that had belonged to my grandfather. It contained a small cabin he had built with his own hands, surrounded by pine trees and bordering a pristine lake. My grandfather had left it to my father, with the understanding that it would remain in the family for generations to come. As children, we had spent summers there fishing, swimming, and gathering around campfires. It was where I'd learned to canoe, where Brandon had caught his first fish, and where Alexis had overcome her fear of water. For me personally, it held even deeper significance. It was where my grandfather had taught me woodworking in his small workshop behind the cabin, skills I still cherished and practiced. "What are you talking about?" I asked Warren. "They're selling Grandpa's land?" "You didn't know?" Warren sounded genuinely surprised. "They've already accepted an offer from some development company, turning it into vacation, condos or something. Got a pretty penny for it too, $500,000, from what your dad bragged." After thanking Warren for the information, I immediately called my father. When he answered, I didn't bother with pleasantries. "Dad, Uncle Warren just told me you're selling Grandpa's land. Is that true?" A pause. "Warren should mind his own business," he finally said. "But yes, we've accepted an offer. The papers will be signed next week." "How could you sell it without even discussing it with any of us?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice level. "Grandpa wanted that land to stay in the family. You always said it would be passed down to us kids someday." "It's our property to do with as we please," my father replied stiffly. "We're getting older, Casper. That cabin needs constant maintenance, and the property taxes keep rising. It makes financial sense to sell now while the market is strong." "I would have helped with maintenance and taxes," I argued. "Or you could have offered to sell it to me. I would have found a way to keep it in the family." "The decision is made," he said firmly. "The developers made a very generous offer. Desperate to preserve this piece of family heritage, I made a counteroffer. I'll match their price. $500,000. I'll figure out financing. My father's laugh was cold. It's not just about the money, Casper. The property needs to go to someone who'll actually use it and appreciate it. The implication that I wouldn't appreciate my own grandfather's legacy was like a slap in the face. I've always loved that land, Dad, you know that. If you loved it so much, you would have visited more often, he countered. When was the last time you were there? 2 years ago? 3? He wasn't wrong about the timing between work demands and raising Jake. I hadn't made it up to the cabin in nearly 3 years. But that didn't diminish its significance to me, or my desire to preserve it for Jake and any future children. Later that evening, Brandon called. Dad told me you're making a fuss about the land sale, he said without preamble. Aren't you upset about it? I asked. We grew up there, Brandon. It's Grandpa's legacy. It's just land, Casper. Land and an old cabin that's falling apart. Mom and Dad need the money for retirement. Not everyone has a cushy tech job like you. His dismissal of both the property's sentimental value and my career, which was successful but hardly cushy given the hours I worked, left me speechless. Alexis's reaction was similarly disheartening. When I called to see if she shared my concerns, she seemed distracted and uninterested. I mean, it's sad, I guess, she said, but I haven't been up there in forever. And Mom said they're putting some of the money aside for each of us, so that's cool. The revelation that my siblings would receive portions of the sale proceeds while I hadn't been mentioned added another layer to my growing sense of exclusion. When I carefully asked Alexis how much they were setting aside, she mentioned $50,000, coincidentally the exact amount she owed me for her education. Determined to make one last attempt at preserving the family property, I requested a family meeting. My parents reluctantly agreed, and the following Sunday, we gathered at their home. Natalie offered to come for support, but I suggested she stay home with Jake, wanting to avoid subjecting either of them to what I anticipated would be a tense discussion. The meeting went worse than even my pessimistic expectations. My father began by declaring the land sale not open for discussion, merely informing us of the details as a courtesy. When I persisted in expressing my desire to keep the property in the family, my mother accused me of only caring about material things. This isn't about material value, I insisted. It's about family history, memories, Grandpa's legacy. If you cared so much about family, my father countered, you would support our decision instead of fighting us on it. Brandon, seated beside our father, nodded in agreement. You always have to make everything difficult, don't you, Casper? Always thinking you know better than everyone else. I just want to preserve something important to all of us, I explained. Something we could share with our children and grandchildren. Well, some of us don't have that luxury, Brandon snapped. Some of us are still trying to establish ourselves professionally without the safety net you've had. The irony of this statement from someone whose professional establishment I had financially backed to the tune of $75,000 was staggering. But before I could point this out, Alexis joined in. Yeah, you've always had everything come easy for you, she added. Good job, perfect wife, cute kid. The golden boy who never has to worry about money. I looked around the room, suddenly feeling like I was among strangers rather than family. These people had no idea of the financial gymnastics I performed monthly to meet all my obligations, including the ones to them. They had constructed a narrative about me that bore little resemblance to reality, and they seemed committed to maintaining it regardless of facts. I left the meeting early, driving home in silence, a heavy realization settling over me. My family saw me primarily as a resource, not as a person with my own needs, dreams, and limitations. It was a painful truth, but one I could no longer ignore. 2 weeks after the failed family meeting, Uncle Warren called again. This time, his voice carried an awkward hesitation I hadn't heard before. Casper, I'm not trying to stir up trouble, but I thought you should know something about the land sale money. According to Warren, he'd been helping my father clear some items from the cabin before the sale finalized when my father received a call from a luxury car dealership. Warren overheard enough to understand my father was finalizing the purchase of a new BMW for Brandon, a $70,000 vehicle that was being partially funded by the land sale proceeds. Your dad seemed really excited about surprising Brandon with it, Warren explained. Called it an investment in his future to help him impress clients or something. The revelation struck like a physical blow. My parents were using money from selling a treasured family property to buy my brother an expensive car after telling me the sale was necessary for their retirement security. Meanwhile, they had specifically excluded me from any portion of the proceeds, while apparently setting aside money for both Brandon and Alexis. That same evening, I received a text from Alexis that inadvertently confirmed Warren's information. She'd sent it to a group chat including both me and Brandon by mistake. "Dad says your car will be ready next week. So jealous. When do I get my surprise? Still waiting on that loan forgiveness he promised, LOL." Brandon's reply came quickly. "Don't worry, sis. Your $50K debt wipe is still happening. Just waiting for the land sale to close." They deleted the messages moments later, but I'd already seen enough. The loan forgiveness Alexis mentioned clearly referred to the $50,000 she owed me, money my parents were planning to give her from the land sale, not to repay me, but to absolve her of the debt she owed me, without my knowledge or consent. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at my phone as the full picture came into focus. My parents were selling a property that should have been preserved for the entire family, using the proceeds to buy Brandon an expensive car he didn't need, and to pay Alexis's debt to me without actually repaying me, while deliberately excluding me from any benefit. I decided to confront them directly. I drove to my parents' house unannounced the next morning, finding them having coffee on their back porch. My father looked annoyed at my unexpected arrival, while my mother offered a tight smile. "Casper, we weren't expecting you," she said. "Is everything all right?" "No, everything is not all right," I replied, remaining standing as they, Saturday. "I know about Brandon's new BMW and Alexis's loan forgiveness. I know you're using the land sale money for both of them while cutting me out entirely." My father's expression hardened. "I don't know who's been filling your head with nonsense." "Don't," I interrupted. "Don't lie to me. I saw Alexis and Brandon's texts. I know exactly what's happening." A tense silence followed before my father finally spoke. "Fine. Yes, we're helping your siblings with some of the proceeds. They need it, you don't." "How do you figure that?" "Look at you," my mother interjected. "Nice job, nice house. You're doing well for yourself. Brandon is still trying to grow his practice, and Alexis is struggling with her debt." "Debt that she owes to me," I pointed out. "Money that I lent her from my savings to help her finish school. Money she promised to repay." My parents exchanged a glance before my father responded. "That was a gift between siblings. Family helps family." "It wasn't a gift," I insisted. "We had a repayment plan. She signed a promissory note." "Well, that's between you and her then," my mother said dismissively. "Our arrangement with Alexis is separate." The conversation continued in circles, with my parents refusing to acknowledge any unfairness in their actions. When I brought up the car for Brandon, my father defended it as a business necessity despite Brandon's practice barely staying afloat after years of operation. When I mentioned being excluded from the property proceeds, they reiterated that I didn't need the money, as though my financial stability earned through years of hard work and careful planning somehow disqualified me from fair treatment. Finally, frustrated beyond measure, I asked the question that had been building for months. "Do you actually care about me as a person, or am I just a financial resource to this family?" My father's face flushed with anger. "How dare you question our love for you? After everything we've done." "What have you done exactly?" I asked quietly. "I'm the one who co-signed your mortgage when you were about to lose the house. I'm the one who backed Brandon's business loan. I'm the one who paid off Alexis's student debt. I've given and given. And all I've asked for in return is basic consideration and respect." "If you're going to throw your financial assistance in our faces," my mother said coldly, "perhaps you shouldn't have offered it in the first place." "I offered it because I love you," I replied. "Because I thought that's what family does for each other, but it seems like it only goes one way in this family." The argument escalated from there, with long suppressed resentment surfacing on both sides. My parents accused me of thinking I was better than the rest of the family because of my career success. I countered that they had systematically taken advantage of my willingness to help, while offering nothing in return, not even the basic courtesy of attending their only grandson's birthday party. After nearly an hour of increasingly bitter exchanges, I finally stood to leave, emotionally exhausted. "I can't do this anymore," I said. "I can't keep pretending this is a healthy family dynamic when it's clearly not." My father followed me to the door, his face set in an expression of righteous indignation. If you walk out now, don't expect things to go back to normal. There are consequences to disrespecting your parents this way. There are consequences to disrespecting your son and grandson too, I replied. I'm not the one who started this. That evening, I received the text that would change everything. My phone buzzed at 9 p.m. as I was helping Jake get ready for bed. When I checked it afterward, I saw a message from my father in our family group chat. After much consideration, your mother and I have decided that this family works better without the constant drama and accusations. We're cutting all ties. Don't come around ever again. I stared at the screen in disbelief, watching as red receipts appeared showing both Brandon and Alexis had seen the message. Then, a moment later, Alexis added a heart reaction to our father's message, a digital endorsement of my excommunication from the family. Minutes later, Brandon sent a private message. Dad finally sees what I've been saying all along. You've never really been committed to this family. I showed the messages to Natalie, who wrapped her arms around me as tears I couldn't control began to fall. I'm so sorry, she whispered. You deserve so much better than this. For hours, I sat in our darkened living room, replaying years of interactions and wondering how we had arrived at this point. I thought about the financial entanglements that still bound us, despite the emotional severing my name on loans and mortgages that could impact my future and, by extension, Jake's. Just before midnight, I made my decision. I returned to the family chat and typed a single line. I'll pull my name from all loans tomorrow. The response was immediate and volcanic. My phone began buzzing with incoming messages, first from Alexis. You can't do that. What about my credit score? Then, from my father. This is exactly the kind of selfish behavior we're talking about. You would ruin your family over hurt feelings? Brandon called 3 times in succession, and when I didn't answer, texted, If you pull your backing from my business loan, I will sue you for everything you have. This is my livelihood. By midnight, the family chat had exploded with dozens of messages, almost all in capital letters, ranging from threats to accusations to sudden pleas for understanding. The final irony wasn't lost on me. The family that had just disowned me was now panicking at the thought of losing access to my financial support. I turned off my phone, set it on the nightstand, and for the first time in months, slept deeply and without interruption. The morning after my announcement, I took a personal day from work. While Natalie took Jake to school, I made 2 important calls. The first was to Rachel, an attorney who specialized in financial law, to schedule an immediate consultation. The second was to Thomas, my director at work, explaining that I was dealing with a family emergency and might need flexibility in the coming weeks. Thomas was understanding. Take whatever time you need, he said. Your projects are ahead of schedule anyway. By 10:30, I was seated in Rachel's office, explaining the complex web of financial obligations linking me to my family members. She listened attentively, taking detailed notes before outlining my options. The mortgage co-signing is the most straightforward, she explained. You can request to be removed, but your parents would need to refinance, which might be difficult given their payment history and current rates. And if they refuse or can't qualify, you remain legally liable for the debt, she said. If they default, it impacts your credit, and you could be pursued for payment. The business loan with Brandon presented similar challenges. The bank has no obligation to release you as a guarantor just because you ask, Rachel explained. Brandon would need to secure alternative backing or pay off the loan. As for the money Alexis owed me, Rachel was more optimistic. You have a signed promissory note, which is excellent. We can send a formal demand letter and establish a legal repayment schedule. If she refuses, we have options for pursuing the debt through legal channels. I left the meeting with a clear action plan. Rachel would prepare the necessary documentation to begin extracting me from these financial entanglements, while I would gather all relevant paperwork from my home files. The process would be neither quick nor easy, but it was necessary. When I turned my phone back on, I had 37 missed calls and over 50 text messages. I read through them quickly, noting the evolution from anger to threats to bargaining. My father had moved from, "You'll regret this betrayal," to, "Let's discuss this rationally, like adults." Brandon's messages remained predominantly threatening, while Alexis had shifted entirely to pleading, claiming she would be financially ruined if forced to repay her debt. Rather than responding individually, I sent a single message to the family chat. I'm working with legal counsel to properly separate our financial affairs. This isn't about punishment, but about establishing healthy boundaries. I'll communicate through my attorney going forward. The response was immediate and explosive. My phone rang constantly for the next hour, with each family member taking turns calling. I didn't answer. Instead, I forwarded Rachel's contact information to each of them with instructions to direct all financial inquiries to her office. That evening, Brandon showed up at my house unannounced. I spotted his car pulling into our driveway as Natalie and I were finishing dinner with Jake. Anticipating a confrontation I didn't want my son to witness, I asked Natalie to take Jake upstairs for his bath while I dealt with my brother. Brandon was already pounding on the front door when I reached it. When I opened it, his face was flushed with anger. "What the hell are you thinking?" he demanded, attempting to push past me into the house. I blocked his entry, standing firmly in the doorway. "I'm not having this conversation with you while you're this angry, Brandon. You can call my attorney tomorrow." "I don't want to talk to your damn attorney. This is family business." "Family business ended when Dad said he was cutting all ties," I reminded him. "You can't disown me 1 minute and demand financial support the next." Brandon's expression shifted, a calculating look replacing his initial rage. "Look, Dad was upset. He didn't mean it. You know how he gets. We can work this out." "There's nothing to work out. I'm removing myself from financial obligations that have become unhealthy for everyone involved." "My practice will collapse without that loan," he said, his voice dropping. "I've got clients depending on me. People could lose their cases." "You've had that loan for 4 years," I pointed out. "You've had plenty of time to establish yourself and secure independent financing. That's not my responsibility." Our conversation continued in circles, with Brandon alternating between threats, manipulation, and occasional moments of what seemed like genuine panic. Throughout it all, I maintained my position calmly but firmly. Finally, as he was leaving, Brandon delivered what he clearly thought was his knockout blow. "Mom and Dad are going to cut Jake out of their will for this. No college fund, nothing. I hope your boundaries are worth your son's future." I watched him drive away, his words echoing in my mind. Not because they hurt, though they did, but because they confirmed everything I'd reluctantly come to believe about my family's transactional view of relationships. Love, in their world, was conditional, a commodity to be extended or withheld based on compliance with their demands. Later that night, Alexis called. Unlike Brandon, she didn't resort to threats. Instead, her voice quavered with what sounded like genuine distress. "Casper, please," she pleaded. "I can't possibly pay back $50,000. I'm barely making ends meet as it is." "I understand it's difficult," I replied, keeping my tone gentle but firm. "That's why Rachel will work with you on a reasonable repayment plan. It doesn't have to happen all at once." "But why now?" she asked. "Why are you doing this to me?" The question struck me as so disconnected from reality that I almost laughed. "Alexis, I'm not doing anything to you. I lent you money with the understanding that you would repay it. You made 4 payments and then stopped. For 3 years I've said nothing, even as you posted about vacations and shopping sprees while claiming you couldn't afford the payments." "That's not fair," she protested. "I have a right to enjoy my life too." "Yes, you do," I agreed, "but not at my expense. Not anymore." Our conversation ended with Alexis in tears, accusing me of being cruel and uncaring, a characterization so at odds with the reality of our history that it left me wondering if we had experienced the same relationship at all. By midnight, the family chat had exploded again, with messages ranging from outright vitriol to desperate backpedaling. My father demanded a face-to-face meeting to fix this mess. My mother suggested I was having some sort of breakdown and needed professional help. Brandon threatened legal action of his own. Alexis alternated between angry accusations and tearful pleas. I read each message carefully, seeing them with new clarity. Behind the varying tones and approaches lay a common thread. None of them acknowledged my perspective or recognized the legitimacy of my boundaries. None expressed genuine concern for my well-being, or considered how their actions had contributed to this situation. In that moment, despite the pain and uncertainty, I knew I had made the right decision. For the first time in years, I was acting in accordance with my own values, rather than sacrificing myself on the altar of family obligation. It wouldn't be an easy road ahead, but it was the right one, not just for me, but for Natalie and Jake as well. 6 months have passed, since that tumultuous night when my family's group chat exploded with capital letters and accusations. 6 months of legal negotiations, difficult conversations, and profound personal growth. While the journey has been painful, it has also been necessary and ultimately healing. The financial disentanglement proceeded more smoothly than I had anticipated, thanks largely to Rachel's skilled guidance. My parents, faced with the reality of refinancing their mortgage without my backing, initially resisted but eventually secured a new loan through my father's retirement fund. The interest rate was higher than they wanted, but it removed my name from the legal obligation, my primary concern. Brandon's situation proved more complicated. His law practice had been struggling for years, a fact he had concealed from the family while continuing to project an image of success. When faced with the prospect of losing my backing on his business loan, he finally admitted the truth. The practice had been operating at a loss for over 2 years, sustained primarily by his personal credit cards and sporadic cash infusions from our parents. After several tense meetings with the bank, Brandon reluctantly agreed to sell the practice to a larger firm where he would continue as an associate attorney. The arrangement allowed him to pay off the business loan entirely, though it wounded his pride significantly. Our personal relationship remained strained, with communication limited to brief, formal texts on holidays. Alexis's response surprised me the most. After the initial shock and anger subsided, she approached the situation with unexpected maturity. We established a formal repayment plan of $300 monthly over 15 years, an arrangement that would take longer but would be manageable on her teacher's salary. More importantly, she acknowledged the fairness of my request and, for the first time, expressed genuine gratitude for the financial help I had provided when she needed it most. "I never really thanked you properly," she admitted during a coffee meeting 3 months after the fallout. "You made it possible for me to finish school when no one else would help. I'm sorry I took that for granted." That conversation marked the beginning of a cautious reconciliation between us. While our relationship isn't what it once was, we're slowly building something new, something based on mutual respect, rather than obligation or expectation. My parents' response has evolved over time as well. The first 2 months brought nothing but anger, accusations, and attempts to enlist extended family members in their campaign to paint me as the villain. Uncle Warren remained steadfastly in my corner, refusing to participate in what he called Harold's pity party, which cost him his own relationship with my father temporarily. The turning point came unexpectedly at the 4-month mark. My mother called on a Tuesday afternoon, her voice lacking its usual defensive edge. "Jake's birthday is coming up," she said. "We'd like to see him. And you." The request took me by surprise. "I'd need to think about it," I replied cautiously. "The last time we spoke, Dad said he was cutting all ties." A long pause followed. "We may have overreacted," she finally admitted, perhaps the closest thing to an apology I would ever receive from her. "Family shouldn't give up on each other so easily." We arranged a brief meeting at a neutral location, a park near our home where Jake could play if the adult conversation became tense. To my surprise, the meeting went reasonably well. My parents brought a modest gift for Jake, made appropriate conversation, and refrained from bringing up the financial disputes that had divided us. It wasn't a full reconciliation, but it was a start. Since then, we've established a new kind of relationship, one with clear boundaries and expectations. My parents visit Jake once a month, always in public settings or at our home with Natalie present. Financial topics remain off-limits by mutual agreement. It's not the warm, unconditional relationship I once hoped for, but it's honest in a way our previous dynamic never was. The most significant changes, however, have occurred within me and my immediate family. Without the constant drain of supporting my extended family financially and emotionally, our household has transformed. The perpetual tension that once characterized our home has dissipated, replaced by a sense of security and ease. Our financial situation has improved dramatically. Without the burden of covering missed mortgage payments or temporary loans to Brandon, we've been able to establish a proper college fund for Jake, begin necessary home repairs, and even take our first real family vacation a week at a lakeside cabin not unlike my grandfather's, where Jake caught his first fish just as I had at his age. Natalie has noticed the difference in me as well. "You laugh more now," she observed recently as we sat on our back porch watching Jake chase fireflies in the gathering dusk. "You're present in a way you couldn't be before." She was right. For years, part of me had always been elsewhere, worrying about my parents' mortgage, Brandon's business troubles, or Alexis's financial irresponsibility. Now, that mental and emotional energy has been redirected toward the people and pursuits that truly nurture me. My relationship with Jake has deepened immeasurably. Without the constant background stress of family drama, I've found the patience and presence to truly engage with his world, to build elaborate dinosaur habitats together, to answer his endless questions about how things work, to simply sit and read with him without part of my mind wandering to unpaid family obligations. The professional impact has been equally significant. Freed from the second job of managing my family's finances, I've found new creativity and focus at work. Thomas noticed the change immediately, commenting on my renewed energy and assigning me to lead an innovative project I would previously have been too overwhelmed to consider. 6 months later, that project resulted in my promotion to senior manager, a position I had once thought was years away. Perhaps the most profound change has been internal, a fundamental shift in how I understand family, obligation, and self-worth. For too long, I had equated love with sacrifice, believing that to be a good son, brother, husband, and father meant perpetually putting others' needs before my own. I had accepted the narrative that establishing boundaries was selfish, that requiring reciprocity was calculating, that expecting basic consideration was unreasonable. I now understand that healthy relationships, family or otherwise, must be built on mutual respect, consideration, and balance. Love that demands constant sacrifice without reciprocity isn't love at all, but exploitation dressed in familiar clothing. True family supports each other's growth and well-being rather than using guilt and obligation to maintain unhealthy patterns. This hard-won wisdom hasn't come without loss. My relationship with Brandon may never recover. My parents and I will likely never enjoy the closeness I once craved. The family I imagined unified, supportive, unconditional in their love may never exist except in my hopes for the one I'm building with Natalie and Jake. Yet in that very loss lies a profound freedom. By releasing the fantasy of what my family should be, I've created space to appreciate what remains and to invest in relationships that truly nourish me. By establishing boundaries that honor my own worth, I've modeled for Jake a kind of self-respect I hope he'll carry into his own future relationships. Last week, Jake asked me an unexpected question as I tucked him into bed. "Daddy, why don't we see Grandma and Grandpa as much as we see Nana and Papa?" he asked, referring to Natalie's parents, who visit weekly. I considered how to answer in a way that honored the truth without burdening him with adult complexities. Finally, I said, "Different families show love in different ways, buddy. Some people can be close every day, and some need more space to be their best selves. What matters is that we all try to be kind and honest with each other, even when it's difficult." Jake thought about this for a moment before nodding seriously. "I think I understand," he said. "It's like when Timmy and I had a fight at school, but then we made new rules for playing together so we wouldn't fight anymore." "That's pretty close," I smiled, amazed at his intuitive grasp of a concept that had taken me 32 years to learn. As I reflect on everything that's happened, I realize that while the path has been painful, it has led me to a place of greater authenticity and peace than I've ever known. By standing firm in my truth, even when it cost me relationships I valued, I discovered that true freedom comes not from avoiding difficult choices, but from making them in alignment with your deepest values. Have you ever had to establish boundaries with family for your own well-being? Did you find it strengthened some relationships while changing others? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video if it resonated with you, subscribe for more real-life stories about family dynamics, and share with someone who might be struggling with similar challenges. Remember, sometimes the most loving thing we can do both for ourselves and others is to be honest about what we truly need. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you find the courage to honor your own truth, whatever that may be.